management. Nurse Betty has worked with Teresa for a long time. She's great. She wants to help people get back to work. If the case calls for it, and Teresa thinks it would be helpful, then we'll pull Nurse Betty in. She'll go to doctor's appointments, physical therapy appointments, whatever she can to maybe move it along. Maybe they need an MRI. It needs to happen a little faster. So she works with us and helps facilitate that. The ICRT also has a pharmacy. They review all the pharmacy and prescriptions to make sure they're not overpaying, so they go through that. And then they have a program called the Enhanced Case Management, but I don't want to take away from Jeff, so I'm going to let him explain that here in a few minutes. The risk control service model, they do on-site risk management training and services. So they have an incredible computer program that Jeff is going to explain also. So their training is fabulous on what they will do for every department. They have open door legal consultation. So anytime there's a question that comes up that they're not sure, what do we do about this work comp case, or maybe it was an auto liability case, whatever it is, and there's a question, they can talk to the attorneys that are going to represent them at no additional cost at any time. And that's O'Halloran, Kossoff, Gettner, and Cook. And so they are the ones that are going to represent you, so they always would like to be on the very beginning of any liability issue, any work comp issue, any employment and related practices issue, and they will walk you through what to do to help prevent it from getting, becoming more expensive. They also are the ones that put on the seminars. We just had one here last week, and it's those same attorneys. They put policies together. I think a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, we had the policies all redone for the police department. A lot of times those policies get outdated. There's always new things that come up, concealed carry, the legalization of marijuana. We have to have new policies in place for the city before those become law. So they make sure we have all those policies in place. So those attorneys also help us with the employee handbook. City had one when in 2007, we sent it to them. They went through it, made the necessary changes, so that when they do represent you, they know exactly what's in the handbook, and they already know how they're going to handle it. So that's a big opportunity. I know we're talking about work comp, and I'm going to explain how that's audited, but on the rest of the package, the auto, liability, and property, that's not audited, which means if you add anything up to $1 million, you won't be charged for it that year. It would just go on the renewal. So fire truck, an added building, anything up to $1 million, they don't charge you for. We don't have to do it till the following year. The ICRMT has an appraisal company that comes out and appraises all the buildings, which they did 3 years ago. It's due to come up here again in the spring. And if you were to pay for that, that's probably about $30,000. So they go to each building, they take a picture of it, the lagoon, the sewer and water department, everything. They take a picture of. We do an evaluation to determine if the buildings are underinsured or maybe they're overinsured. We relook at stock and everything that's inside of the buildings. And that's just a nice thing because there's so many times that without that, it's just kind of a guess. So that kind of helps. So we're looking forward to that again this year. They cover earthquake and flood. And another thing that's been very helpful is the ICRMT includes volunteers. So if we have the Festival of Lights and we have volunteers down there working and somebody gets hurt, the ICRMT will cover them as just like it's a work comp claim. There's a PETA coverage is offered. So if there's a firefighter or a police officer that is off duty on a work comp, and the work comp company normally pays 66 1/3%. Since they have to be paid at 100%, the city is usually on that other 33 1/3%. But we do offer coverage that would cover that also. So we just have to look and see if that makes sense. And then we also cover the marina, which is not a typical that carriers would cover for the city, but it came in pretty handy. We had quite a big claim, about $800,000 on the seawalls that was covered this year, so that helped. And then we go on to the MedCore. I don't know if, Jeff, did you want to explain how the MedCore works?
So, good afternoon. As Denise said, my name is Jeff Bassler. I'm one of the risk management consultants with IPMG. So you're part of the ICRMT, a lot of acronyms, Illinois Counties Risk Management Trust, but they hire IPMG to administer all the claims and risk management services. I am not your assigned risk manager. Unfortunately, Derek Madeira had a personal issue, he couldn't make it. So in a former life, I was a fire chief at the city of Elmhurst, retired and came to work for IPMG, and I happened to be right across the river at a conference, fire chiefs conference. Denise called me and asked me if I could swing over. Saw your fire chief yesterday, so it worked out well. But I've been here before. I've dealt with Chief Knapp, and I want to say, too, is that you guys are lucky you have somebody like Denise that is very involved. We deal with a lot of agents throughout the whole state. The ICRMT is made up of about 350 public entities. I don't know what the number of agents are, but some of them are engaged like Denise, and some of them are not. So I would say you guys are lucky to have Denise. But so at IPMG, our risk management, we not only try to stop or prevent those accidents from happening, but when those accidents do happen and you have an injured employee, we try to get that person back to work quicker and in better shape when they come back. So I'm just going to couple the services that we do have. I could spend 45 minutes going through all the services, and that's one thing I will say about the ICRMT. The services that we provide, I'm very familiar with a lot of other risk pools out there. Nobody offers the services that we do, and 99.9% of them are all free of charge, where other entities just don't offer them. So one is MedCore. It's a 24-hour nurse triage phone system. So when people get hurt, I'm sure you've seen it. People sometimes are embarrassed, and you ask, do you need to see a doctor? No, I'm okay. And they go home, and guess what? They are injured. They need to seek treatment. And for statistics, somebody told me when I started this job, for every day a claim goes unreported, the cost can go up by 3%. So this MedCore 24-hour nurse triage system, you call the number, 1-800 number, talk to a nurse. They use an algorithm on a computer. They ask the person questions. We say have the supervisor call with the employee, put the employee on a phone, and they ask the employee questions. And based on those answers to those questions, they may recommend first aid, elevation, ice pack, ibuprofen, whatever. If it gets worse, call us back. Or they may say, you need to seek treatment, and they will even send a report to, if you have an occupational health provider that you utilize, they will send a report saying the city of East Peoria is sending over an injured employee, here's what's wrong. I will use the city of Danville as one of my accounts, and they had a public works person came in at the end of the day. He was holding his arm like this. The supervisor said, what's wrong? He said, I hurt my arm. Do you need treatment? No, I'm fine. Well, the supervisor, he didn't have the medical training to be able to say, you know what, you do need to see a doctor. He went home, came back the next day, same coat, same shirt. He couldn't move his arm to take his coat off. And the supervisor said to me after I reviewed this, I wish this was here 3 months ago. He tore his bicep, and that bicep started rolling up into his arm. Now so they sent him, they sent emergency room right then, very expensive claim. They sent him right to emergency surgery, very expensive. And luckily they got it in time, but if that would have rolled up in his arm, there's a chance that they might not have been able to repair that. So the supervisors really like it in the fact that it helps them make that decision to seek treatment for that injured employee. So we've had some really good success with it, and I believe you have used it here in East Peoria. The other thing is, Denise mentioned we have online training. We have 5 pages. You'll see some listed on the slide up there. That's only a small portion of what we have available in the training, and there's all kinds of things. There's police, there's fire, there's public works. But the one thing I want to note is, as you know, the law is changing, and every employee has to go through sexual harassment training. As Denise mentioned, our law partners, OKGC and liability, employee liability, we have Julie Bruck does a sexual harassment class. I had her taped doing one of these classes in the village of Vernon Hills last year, and we put that on the portal. You won't see it. You'll see sexual harassment training listed on the master list, but you won't see hers. but we are updating it. At the beginning of the year, we're going to update it. We're going to record her doing another program. That's going to be available to you. It's certified, it meets the law, and you'll be able to have any and everybody go through that training to meet your requirement. And it's all free of charge. We don't charge for anything. The other thing Denise mentioned was the enhanced case management. So when we have an employee, we found when we have an employee that is injured, if they have a comorbidity, say overweight, high blood pressure, diabetes, or God forbid, because of the pain they were prescribed an opiate and they become opiate dependent, it's going to impede the recovery from that workers' comp injury. So what we do, we have some you might remember Dr. Kim Gaston. She used to be our assigned risk manager here a few years ago. She's a doctor and a chiropractor, and she came up with this enhanced case management, and she works with the employee. It's all voluntary. They don't have to do it, but she reaches out to that employee, and she offers to work with them to try to get those comorbidities under control. Now, I will say that she's had some really, really good success with this. She's had one where she saved the claim over $200,000. We had a police officer that was overweight, had a knee injury. The doctor would not do the surgery till he lost the weight. She worked with him. He lost the weight. He lost over 100 pounds. Doctor said, you don't need surgery anymore, and he's very healthy. That saved that claim over $200,000. So it's like I say, it's all voluntary. It's kind of behind the scenes in that the nurse case managers and the claims adjusters and Kim will look at all the claims. If they feel it meets the criteria, Kim contacts that employee, unbeknownst to the risk manager, because she tries to keep patient confidentiality there, that patient-doctor confidentiality, because they're talking about things that are other than the workers' comp injury, because workers' comp is excluded from HIPAA, but she's talking about other issues with that client or with that employee. So she works with them, and if we do, the risk manager becomes aware of a injured employee that maybe they will meet that criteria, I can reach out to Kim and say, could you take a look at this claim, and then I'm done with it. I don't see any of the reports or anything that goes on with it. So she's had some good luck with it. The other thing I believe your police department was involved in, now this is one of the services that you would pay for, is Badge of Health. Based off this enhanced case management, she's worked with police and fire. She can work with others. She'll work with them, and if people meet a certain criteria like overweight and have a lot of these comorbidities, she works with them with education, diet, exercise, things like that. She'll even prescribe, she'll find maybe a chiropractor or a workout facility or something to help. So one of my clients, the Lyle Woodridge Fire Protection District, 13 people met the criteria. She worked with those 13 people. The trustees put the money forward. They thought it was worth spending the money. And collectively, in 2 months, those 13 lost over 300 pounds. So it really paid some dividends, and even some of them to this day are still, I won't say that all of them are, still on that good track, but a lot of them are. So they got them healthier. So that's enhanced case management and the Badge of Health. The other one that's not on the slide that Denise just heard about last week at our seminar that I'm pretty excited about, it's called Tactical Athlete. It basically treats your injured employee like an athlete. I don't know how many Bear fans we have in here, but when Mitch Trubinsky got hurt, and you watched him walking off the field, he had a orthopedic surgeon walking right behind him. They walked into that locker room. They have an MRI machine there. They had an MRI. Believe me, they knew exactly what his injury was and what the treatment plan was before he went home. He left that field that day, the stadium. So basically what they do is they set up a network of top-notch orthopedic surgeons, MRI facilities, rehab places. They built out the network right now only in Metro Chicago area, and most of the clients are mine. And what they do is they try, and once again, it's all voluntary. We can't force, we can't direct a person's treatment in the state of Illinois with workers' comp, but we can offer it to them, and they can get usually somebody back to work, treated if surgery is required, rehab, back within about a third of the time. Where it really pays off, and this is where they started. They started with the Milwaukee Fire Department, and they saved in the first year, they saved the Milwaukee Fire Department $400,000. Now they're working with the whole city of Milwaukee, and they're saving them in the millions of dollars on workers' comp claims. They're in 7 states. They work with Memphis, Seattle, a lot of big cities throughout the country. So we just started using them, I want to say December of last year, and I've had at least 6 injured employees that have utilized it, and I can tell you that all 6, it's done exactly what it said it would do. They got them in, see these, these specialists, and this isn't getting them back to work at 70%. This is getting them back at 100%. They pride themselves on that. Get them back to work. And when you think about police and fire, you guys know this, Denise mentioned it, with PETA, we're paying 66 2/3 to that police officer or firefighter. You're paying the other third of that PETA. Plus, if you have minimum staffing, you're paying overtime to cover that staff. So you can see where the money savings for you really pays off. And, I will tell you that being a former firefighter that, there's a lot of, and my oldest son's a firefighter paramedic, and my youngest, they say he went to the dark side. He's a police officer. But, they want to get back to work. The newer, I don't want to say everybody doesn't want to get back to work, but, there's people out there. But my kids, if they were hurt, they want to get back to work. They want to do whatever they have to do to get back to work. And it's not only work, it's what they do on their time off. So if you're injured and you can't do that, they'll do whatever they have to do to get back to work. So that's where I think this program is exciting. Denise will keep her informed when I have a meeting at the end of the month with this tackle athlete to find out when are we going to build out the network down here in this area. So we'll have more to come on that. I did not have any more.
The only thing is we have this one page that was specific to East Peoria.
Oh, is that with the enhanced case management? Yes, I think Denise has a page there that kind of shows what the savings were here at East Peoria utilizing the enhanced case management. So you can see there's some significant dollars there that have been saved to date. I'm not going to tell you that it's always going to be like that because it's up to that individual that's working and putting, it's truly that person's putting their effort into it. But it has paid off. Now, when you see the expenses, that $8,000, so we do charge the claim her time for that, but it's only up to a certain amount. And you have an SIR, so she will not engage with an employee until she gets permission from you to be able to do that because that's your money with that SIR.
Okay, we'll go to the next slide. We're going to talk now just kind of about the basics of work comp. And so the very basics of work comp is what it pays when someone is injured, it pays medical, it pays lost wages when they're off work, and there's a death benefit in it. So that's really the basics of work comp. And in Illinois, there are only 2 insurances that are, by law, you have to carry. One is work comp and the other is auto. So on the work comp, the city has a $300,000, what we would call deductible, or SIR, self-insured retention, per claim. So each claim that comes in, the city's on the first $300,000. I'm going to show you a little bit in the next slide, like why we came up with that, what would it be if it was $1, and what it was before. But just so you know, we take every department, and you can see all the codes here, and every code has a different rate on it. So we take that rate times the payroll, and that's where we get that manual rate we came up with, where we would take the 30%. So each code has its own rate, but these are all the different rates that we have here for the city. Does that make sense? Yes. So what that means is when this, like right now, our next policy year starts on 12/1. So we have to project what we think the payrolls will be for the year of 19 and 20. So we project that out the best we can. And then at the end of the year, after the policy year is over, then we go back and they do an audit to see what was the actual amount paid for payroll. That includes overtime, anything that was paid out, because you're covering it for work comp. So if the payroll was higher, then you might owe a little bit more. If the payroll was down that year, you would get money back on it. But that is the only policy on this policy that is audited. Okay? So back to the work comp basics. We go by the Illinois Work Compensation Act as our guide, and everybody knows the state of Illinois, although we've seen some improvements, there's still some issues. So one of the issues we have in the state of Illinois, that if there is an injury that might have been previous for them even coming to work, if it's aggravated by the work that they are doing, the employer is on it. It only has to be a 0.01% chance that it's been aggravated at work, and then the employer is on the whole thing. So that's what we face in the state of Illinois. So we have to determine if a claim is compensable. And compensable means, did the injuries arise out of, or were they in the course of employment? So that's what the reports that we send in, those are all to determine if it's compensable. One of the things we talk about is returning to work, and that has been something that's been discussed in this city. We can't always get them to return to work, but whenever we can, it really helps because it will keep the claims considerably down. The indemnity is by far the most expensive part. So, like Jeff said, when people sit home, you can get depressed, eating the Cheetos, whatever. And so when we can get them back to work, a lot of times that improves the medical outcome. We have better claim communication because the employee is actually there, and overall case management. So if somebody's home and we don't know that they're not happy with their PT or they're not getting their MRI, we can't fix what we don't know. So if they're there and they can communicate this to the supervisor or to Teresa, we have a lot better opportunity to go in there and fix that and make that run a little bit smoother. Helps them maintain their regular work routine. Stays in the workforce, and like we said, it reduces the cost. So one of the things we talked about on the previous page was an incident only. I just want to explain what that means. Many times we will have what we would call a near miss. So someone just barely escaped getting hit in the head, and they were able to duck, but they almost got hit in the head. They could turn that in and say, this almost happened. Okay, so we want to look at those near misses because we're like, if that almost happened, that could have been a huge claim. It could have taken someone's life. So we want to take those seriously. We want to see, how do we prevent that so something doesn't happen the next time? So that's why we want to report those. They don't count towards your premium, they don't count towards anything, but it's more of a record to say, hey, here's what's going on. So we can extrapolate information from the loss runs and say, hey, we've had several near misses where someone's almost got hit in the head at Public Works. We better come up with another policy or do some more training, just for an example. So does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. So the other thing you'll see on your policy is a limit of $2.5 million. So in the state of Illinois, there is no limit on work comp claims. We have to pay whatever the claim is. But there is a limit you'll always see, and this one's higher than what you would see on a normal type of policy, but it's for third-party liability. So if it wasn't the employee that was suing the city, maybe it was a spouse or somebody else was saying, this employee was put in a bad predicament, whatever, we're going to sue the city. So that's what that limit's for. So let's look at the premiums on the next page. And for years we had, I think since we began, we never have had $1, where they would pay from $1 if there was a claim. And actually, I just called to find out what that would be, and it's about $1.5 million is what that would be. You don't like that?
No.
I didn't think so. So in order to keep the premiums manageable, we started off with a $100,000 deductible per claim. So you can see in 2009 through 12, we went back a little further because we wanted to show what those premiums were. You can see what the claims were when we had $100,000 per SIR. In 2013, we explored going to $100,000, we explored $500,000, we explored $1 just to see where they came out, and we kind of decided that $300,000 was probably going to be a place that would save the city a little bit more money but not have all the risk out there that we weren't comfortable with. So that brought the premiums down less than half, and you can see where they had been at $588, 2018 it was $196. But that's the city on the first $300,000 per claim. So when we figured it out, because I just wanted to see what has it saved the city as opposed if we were on $1 over the past, since 2014, it has saved the city $3 million as opposed to being on $1 fully insured. And, if we didn't have the one bad year, it would look a lot better than that, but it's still $3 million ahead.
Yeah, just so I can point out to explain this chart you're looking at, these are our actual premium cost.
For work comp.
Correct, for work comp. So the 2018 is technically this year because it started December 1st of 18 and it runs through December 1st of this year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So
Correct.
I just wanted to point that out in case you were confused by what you were staring at there.
Okay. So on the next page, we just want to dissect some of these claims so that you had an idea of where they were coming from. So red is the fire department, blue is the police, and orange is public works. And hopefully you have a colored copy so you can tell that. So these are the claims by department from 2014 to present. So you'll see the number in there, of how many claims each department had. And of course, 2017 is our bad year. The next page shows what the dollars are, the claims dollars by department. So 14 through 18, 15 was a great year, 2016 was a horrendous year. When we look at the police department, where we had the highest amount of claims, there were several surgeries in there. There were some large settlements in there, that's why that number is so high. And then this current policy year, we're doing much better. The next page is where we pay the settlements. So these were just settlements without the claims, and these are settlements by year by department. So you can see how much of that 2016 was settlements. So this is showing the date they were incurred, not the date they were paid, okay? On the next page, we're showing the date they were paid. Because most claims, if they happen in 2016 or 2017, they don't get closed that year. If there's surgery, if there's physical therapy, if there's an attorney involved and we have to go through a lot of litigation, it can be 2 or 3 years until that claim is closed. So that's why we go back and you'll see a spike like maybe we paid all these settlements out in 2018 policy, but maybe they happened in 16. Does that make sense?
Would you mind explaining the settlement so they understand what we're talking about with settlements?
So a settlement is it's above and beyond like the medical and time off. So someone has surgery and they are asking for a settlement because of going through the surgery or what they've gone through, or just depending on if they have an attorney, whether they have an attorney or not, they can get a settlement. That doesn't really, isn't the cause for them to get one. But a lot of times if there's a surgery, the company will go in and offer them a settlement. So, yeah, that's...
And it's based off of a specific percentage for the body part?
Yes.
Is based off of their current pay rate? So
Yes.
it's a percentage of...
So there's a percentage, which is basically across the whole state. It's like 10% for a hand, and I don't really know what all those are, 20% for an arm. But those are already set, and to help determine what that settlement would be. If someone had a totally disabled arm, then they might get the 15% of a whole man is what they would call it.
Okay.
So there's a limit on what those would be, but they can be rather high and they can cost the city a lot of money.
And which they have. And just to point out, the shortfalls above and beyond what we budget for, and I'm going to use last year as an example. It's not included in this packet, but just to give you an idea why I think it's important to talk about the settlements. So we put $1 million in the budget last year. We ended up at $1.8 million. And that shortfall of a little over $800,000 came out of the general fund. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
So,
And then the last thing is, just because we have a lot of new supervisors, we have, some turnover, which not a lot, but we have some. We wanted to make it easy, and so Teresa and Evelyn and I would kind of put this together to let people know what is the protocol when you have a work comp claim. What is the employee's responsibility? What is the carrier's responsibility? And so this next 2 pages, this is actually on 1 page, but we give this out, or Teresa sends this out to supervisors so they know what to do. So they can always call me, they can call Evelyn, they can call Teresa, but if it's an after-hours thing, they can't get a hold of us. So this just kind of is the protocol. So the employee's responsibility is to report the accident to their supervisor within 24 hours. Like Jeff said, the more time that goes by, the more expensive the claim gets. And we complete what we call a Form 45. That's what's required by the insurance company to turn in, that tells where, when, why, and how the claim happened. Supervisors have to be informed when there is a doctor's appointment, like to know when that is. And we have changed about 2 years ago. We now send everyone to OSF on William Kumpf. So that is the city's preferred physician of choice. So that's where they can go to their own doctor if they want to, but we can always require them to go to the city's. Following the doctor's appointment, a work status release report from the physician must be given to the supervisor. And if possible, the city makes every effort to return employees to work with modified or restricted duty. So they come back with something from the doctor that would say they have a 10-pound limit or 20-pound limit they can lift, so we try to modify their working conditions. Any prescription, medical bills, or medical concerns that go to that employee must be given directly to Teresa's supervisor so we can get those to IPMG. All medical treatment must receive prior authorization before the treatment. And we have to make sure that the employee signs the RX prescription letter so they can get their prescriptions, and to let Teresa know if they have a surgery that's been scheduled or even if one has been rescheduled. So on the next page is the employer's responsibility. That would be the city's responsibility, is to complete and send all the forms in. So we have a claims packet that I think I've gone through with every department. It has the Form 45. We also have the supervisor's report, and if there are any witnesses. We're humans, we tend to forget, so if someone says they fell, we like to go back and say, okay, what were the conditions? Was it a rainy day? Were they wearing the proper footwear? What was going on with them? So we get all those reports done. We get the witness statement, wage statement, and forward that to IPMG, and then we make sure there's been an accident investigation, which is something we work with the ICRMT. We've done several of those. I know, Dan, I think you've been on one of those, but we would set it up at the Philippi building where we would do like a mock accident, and then we would have supervisors come around and say, what did you see here? Maybe we would have a set of stairs where the light was out. Maybe there was some stuff on the stairs, maybe something on the floor. Just see how many things people pick up to make sure that the investigation statement doesn't just say, Denise fell. It could be, the light needs to be repaired. There was things on the stairs. She was carrying something too heavy. She should have gotten someone else. So that's what the accident investigation is. And then the ICRMT's responsibility is once a claim is received, the adjuster is assigned and a claims number is provided, and then within 24 hours, they will contact the employee, employer, and physician. If needed, a medical case nurse manager will be assigned. And then, as Jeff said below, if it's a weekend after hours, you can always call that MedCorps too, just to double check and make sure. Pretty much concludes what I have, and so
You guys had a lot.
questions?
First of all, thank all of you for taking the time to come here, and I asked for this because I think this is a very important subject matter, and quite honestly, I've been engaged in this behind the scenes for the last 4 years, and I think it's important that all elected officials are engaged somewhat, so you're kept abreast of where we're at. I'd encourage any employee that if there's an issue with the process, I hear that from employees as to why they go and seek legal counsel and search for a settlement and whatnot. If there's something wrong with our system or the way we do business, please step forward. I mean, you don't have to do it publicly by all means, but help us. Help us help you, because we're all in this together. So, but I'd like to open it up if the commissioners have any questions.
I have one. You talked that last bullet about the internal accident investigation.
Uh-huh.
Is it a practice to share those accident investigation results with the remaining employees? The reason I ask that is my current employer, in the event somebody gets injured, we have a safety stand down, which the facts of that case are shared with everybody so they can learn. It's not to point out anybody, but it's to learn from what you were describing, that here's somebody walking down the stairs in a dark lit area. But anyway, it's a safety stand down with the purpose of sharing with everybody in the city. Do we do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we recently just changed our process. We were having safety committee meetings monthly where we would have an injured employee come in to the safety committee. It was not to put them in the hot seat, but it was more or less to say what happened, because we know if it happened to this person, it could happen to the next one. So we would want to see if there's something that needed repaired. We'd want to see if there was a policy that needed to be put in place or training so that it wasn't a repeat, so we could learn from the accidents that have happened. So we've just recently changed. We've only had one meeting so far where we're going to the department heads. So you're right. We want that message to get passed on of accident investigation. If we found out that there's something damaging or that an employee could get hurt, that's where it would be passed on at the department head meeting. So the mayor would be aware of it. The supervisors and department heads would be aware of it.
Well, I think more importantly, informing the people that are actually at risk of injuring themselves. And it doesn't sound like, even with that description, that we're necessarily getting that message entirely. I mean, if somebody wrenches a knee stepping off of, a fire truck, or somebody gets hit by a police car door, again, knowing whatever those situations were that led up to that, what can we do? But that's my only 2 cents there.
What I would hope we would do is in that department head meeting, like I'll give an example of there were bees. We had bees one time at one of the water treatment stations. So, that message gets passed on because maybe the department head, maybe supervisors weren't there, and then we would count on them to get that message to their employees or the people that they're working with in their division. So, Dennis would take care of public works, the chiefs would pass that down to the supervisors if they weren't at that meeting, so the supervisors could make sure all the employees were aware of that.
Okay. I guess my action item for the city then is that I would like to see that as a normal part of our culture every time, be sharing that with all employees, regardless of if it was in public works, it still gets shared with the other departments.
Yeah, that's important.
If I could interject
Yeah,
just a
go
moment.
ahead.
Some of our clients do something very similar to that, where we could create what we call them our safety alerts, and it's basically a standard format for any incident that might happen. And again, challenges with the city are that there's multiple location shifts, 24 hours, and if we could find probably an electronic way, we could get that out to different locations and have postings of those things. Again, from a quality or safety standpoint, it's really important to get that to the people on the ground that are at risk in those circumstances, so we can easily turn that around pretty quickly, hopefully, for you.
We will work on that, Commissioner.
Yeah, good
Thank
point.
you.
Any other comments from the
No,
commissioners?
just thank you for presenting and your information.
Our
I
pleasure.
would like to take a moment to ask anyone in the audience, any public members of the audience wish to come up and ask any questions? Any comments? Hearing none. Well, thank all of you again. Appreciate your time. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.